G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza, and in this video we're going to be talking about poses. Why are poses important? Well, poses are used to convey character and personality of a character. They're also used to convey what's happening in a scene, whether it be action or a certain particular type of drama. And they look cool. Poses are most often used to make someone look a certain way, and often that's cool because you draw a hero in a pose. And we see it all the time in comic book covers and all this stuff. So we're going to be talking about poses and taking it down to the bare bones and working our way up to creating more complex and interesting poses. Now, the reason we're doing it this way is because when you look at a pose that is interesting and complex, that's what you think. Oh wow, that's really complex. I could never do something like that. But you'd be surprised how simple it can be if you really bring it down to the bare bones. And now when I say bare bones, I mean like bare bones. I mean stick figure bare bones, okay? So, the most common stick figure I see people draw who don't draw very much looks something like this. They do the head, they do a body, they do legs like that, and they do arms. That's pretty bad, okay? So, I mean, it's interesting that I'm going to be teaching you how to draw stick figures, but you'd be surprised how important this is. So this is a stick figure of someone who can't draw stick figures. I'm going to show you how to draw a good stick figure, and then we're going to use that stick figure to start drawing simple poses. The reason I'm doing this is because my experience with poses began, frankly, with stick figures. My experience with poses began in animation, and I started animation doing stick figures. And I actually learned certain dramatic key poses through drawing them as stick figures, and they conveyed really strong, which is interesting to me in hindsight, because it shows that it's really about how the silhouette holds and where that form takes place and shape that conveys a strong pose, not necessarily what the character looks like or anything like that. So we're going to go back to basics, and we're going to look at stick figures, but we're going to look at how to draw a good stick figure first. So this is a crap stick figure. I'm going to go, that's the no stick figure. So what I'm going to do now is show you how, well, at least I mean, there are lots of different kinds of stick figures, but I'll show you the kind that I used when I started learning to draw poses. And they had really thick limbs, and they tended to look a bit like this. So I did the head, and I did the body, and it was a little closer to this. Now, I know this is probably not what you expected a pose tutorial to be like, starting off with stick figures, but bear with me. So that's a little closer to the stick figure that I would draw. You need to make sure that there's a neck, but not too much of a neck, and that the legs aren't just drawn apart like that. You're actually going for something of a realistic proportion, okay? So we're beginning with this. Now, I'm going to convey to you why this is the case. On my next frame, I'm going to draw a bunch of different poses, some of the ones that I kind of began working with. So I'm going to give myself two platforms to work from. So on my lower layer, I'm going to have this. Whoop. I'm going to give myself a couple of platforms. So there's one, and there's another. So on this platform, I'm going to draw a bunch of stick figures. Okay, so first and foremost, in the middle here, I'm going to draw my standy up dude, and he's waving, and he's got his arm on his waist. Okay, so that's a really, really simple sort of pose, but you can see that everything's pretty straightforward, and it's a strong pose. Okay, so let's go for something a little more dramatic. Let's go for something like a crawl or a crouch. Okay, so I start off with the head a bit lower, the back is curved like that, the front leg bent, and the back kind of straightened out but still bent. Okay, and then I have the left arm reaching down to balance on the ground, and I realize that it's a bit misproportioned, so I'm just going to do that now, and then the other arm out like that to balance. So there we go, that's another pose that we've got here. Okay, so we've got two simple poses. We can see how this proportion with a small neck and the proportions of the arms like that, that's all quite strong. Okay, the other thing to notice is that in some cases, drawing a solid elbow like this in that arm is important, but in some cases having a curve like in this arm is important because it actually adds to the motion and a fluidity. If this arm was rigid like that, I mean, it could work, but I don't know, it kind of comes through a sense of feel and stuff. Okay, so what's another one I'm going to do? I'm going to do one where he's getting ready to jump in the air. So I'll do a lower head, his back's curved, his knees are both crouched, and his arms are springing back like that. There we go. So this guy's ready to pounce. See, and you can see how really quickly I'm getting strong poses in without needing to worry about things like anatomy, really being too concerned with things like proportion. It really is about conveying where the motion is going and where the balance is, where the body is. And you will be able to see if you draw it like a stick figure very quickly that what looks off and what works. So I'm going to fast forward this next bit and just draw a bunch of poses, and then I'm going to talk about what they are, how I came to them, and then next we're going to move on to creating them in more of a solid form. And there we are, I've finished an array of poses, and I want to go through these and zoom in and just kind of demonstrate how without the need for anatomy or facial expression or anything, we have some very real expressiveness here. So I'm going to zoom in here. What do we have here? In this stick figure, I see a dancer. I see someone kind of finishing off something of a Spanish dance move. Here, this is a bit of a fall down. You can tell he's lost his sense of balance, and the motion is kind of being thrown backwards. This looks like a bit of a leap. He's reaching forward and is springing out with his forward leg ready to reach out and land, and his forwards arm reaching and his backwards arm being thrown back. This is our first one that we've seen with the wave, and then this one, which is a bit of a landing, and this one, which is getting ready to jump, perhaps up or forwards, or even having just landed and leaning back. And this is something of a premeditated attack almost. It's like the praying mantis, or like that Karate Kid move. And this is our power up looking move, or kind of a landing from a very high height. Coming down here, we have someone who has just jumped in air and is in that kind of free fall, zero gravity part of the jump where they're not jumping and they're not falling, they're in the air before and between each of those. Here we have something of a dance leap where they're expressively leaping wholeheartedly into the air. This is something of a push or a defense, almost like a Dragon Ball Z blast as well. A lot of these kind of reminiscent of Dragon Ball Z to me, because I used to do stick figure Dragon Ball Z animations. This is a kick mid-air, very Bruce Lee. This is a bit. So you can tell with things like these ones, these are really intense motions, whereas this one you can see it's not, and it looks like a bit of a sneak. He's kind of gingerly walking along. This guy's confused. And this guy is accusing this guy of something that this guy's obviously confused about. So I wanted to demonstrate how, aside from the fact that being zoomed out, they all look like weird Chinese characters. Japanese, I don't know, some kind of Oriental writing. That we can see that there are personalities, that there are expressions that are being conveyed through some really simple things. So, I mean, I hope I didn't bore you by going straight to stick figures when we talk about poses, but this really is the bare bones of poses. Now, what I want to do is take these, and with the knowledge that we have of anatomy and form, draw them into full bodies. So this might take a bit of time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a full body pose drawing for every single one of these poses, so you can see how I personally would convey them from a stick figure pose into a full body pose. Now, in doing this, the first one I do is going to be in real time as I talk about it and demonstrate what I'm doing. So I have this pose up here in the corner. I'm going to put a copy of it out here on the ground. And let's make this 30% alpha. So it's quite dark, and I'm going to do two versions of this so you can see it next to each other. Okay, so I'm going to create this Spanish dancer character in a full body pose. When I say full body, I mean not stick figure, but with human or more human anatomy, kind of like a comic drawing. I'm going to go through the process and explain what I'm doing, and then I'm going to fast forward through the process of doing all of these, but you'll still see me doing them, and then I'll backtrack back in real time and explain what I've done. So I'm going to lock these layers and have a layer to work with. And the first thing I do when I'm drawing a character is, as many of you know, and those who are new to these tutorials might not know, but many of you will know, that I work with construction lines. So I begin with the head. I draw the skull part of the head and add the jaw. Okay, now this head, in my impression, seems to be wanting to look up in pride as the dance move finishes, so I'll draw the eye line facing up. Again, I have other tutorials on construction lines and on anatomy, so I'm not going to spend too long explaining these things. I'll just kind of say what I'm doing as I do it, and if you're interested in that, you can find them in my other tutorials. Okay, so next thing, I'm going to draw the lines for the motion of the body. This is essentially drawing a thin and tall stick figure like we have, but adding room for things like the shoulders and the waist. So I have the torso line like this. I'm going to add my waist, my hip bone line, and then draw my legs. Okay, so the knee joints are about here, and I want to bend this one back a little bit, and the toe is going to point out. And I have the foot here. Okay, so shoulder. The shoulder's a bit askew. It's a bit on an angle like that. And then we have our arms go up and the hand curve around. And then this come around like that. So that is my bare bones. That's what I'm doing for the line work before I add the chunks. So the chunks are, we have the rib cage, which is this bit here. Whoops. We have the pelvis bone. And really, that is all you need. And if you wanted, I tend to rough out the arms personally. I tend to add a bit of guide so I know how I'm going to end up drawing the limbs. Like that. And then I'm going to take this, bring them over here. But I'm going to hide or delete the the other stick figure thingy I had, the thick one. Okay, so now this is my guide that I'm going to be following. So I'm going to lock that, I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to draw this character. Now that I've got my bare bones in, so you can see how this has progressed from this really thick, blocky sort of stick figure into creating an anatomic base where we can see where the bones go and where the limbs are stretching and have things in kind of an organic sort of way. I'm going to draw the character. So I'm going to get my line tool. The ear would go here, looking up, the nose kind of pointing out. I'm going to have a pouty mouth because he's quite a proud sort of dancer. Have his eyelids shut and his eyebrows raised, and an expression of pride. Okay, so we have our face in. Let's draw a neckline. Okay, so the torso is a bit thicker than I've drawn. have that as our construction lines indicate, following this sort of flow. Now, again, anatomy isn't something I'm going to be talking about, but it is something I am naturally keeping in mind while doing this. So if there are things here anatomically that I'm drawing that confuse you, or you're not familiar with, or you want to know what they are and I'm not talking about it, go watch my video on drawing male anatomy. Okay, and there's also a tutorial on hands. There's tutorials for a lot of the things that I'm not talking about specifically in this video. This video is about poses. So I'm drawing the pose. So I have this arm come around like this, and I'm going to draw this fist gently closed like this. And we have the butt kind of pop out a bit, the leg muscles, and the foot. This guy's got kind of girlish legs, whatever. This isn't going to be perfect, but it's going to be good enough. And that's what I want. So I'm going to zoom out. Now, again, this isn't a perfect example, and things are slightly misproportioned because I've rushed it. The head should be a little smaller. But, I mean, it's good because it looks like this guy's wearing a leotard, and we get the point across. So if I hide my reference, you can see that this as a pose is quite strong, and that he's a dancer finishing off his dance move. And that all originated from this funny little stick figure. So let's see what the other ones end up looking like. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen. I have completed the full body versions of all of these poses that you see here. And the thing I really wanted to demonstrate is how it really comes down to the bare bones. Same with anatomy and same with everything else like a facial expression. It really comes down to what you do before you try and do the intricacies. And in this case, I did that with stick figures. And as you can see, the intensity of these poses isn't greatly enhanced by adding a full body. The pose itself is just as strong in stick figure form, but it is more interesting and detailed when you add the body. Now, we'll go through these one by one just so you can see what I ended up doing. So this is the one I drew with you watching me talk about it, so I won't go through that one anymore. This is the fall over one. It's all quite enhanced by his expression. Were that not there, it would be a little less dramatic, but you know, so we can see how having a facial expression adds that. These motion lines help as well. This is our pounce forward. It's quite a heroic sort of about to get into the action. Now the body type that I've done for all of these has just been kind of like a thin male body type, just because it's easiest to show motion off without things getting in the way like muscles or boobs. This is a pretty straightforward one. There's not too much to talk about there. This one is our crouch one. Things like this can be quite tricky to do because you do need to have something of an understanding of how the shoulder muscles and back muscles work into each other and how things should overlap. This next one is, it's almost like a landing or a getting ready to leap forward. It's an anticipation stance. This is our Karate Kid praying mantis thingy or whatever it is. So, you know, taken off of that. This one is our Dragon Ball Z one with a lovely view of the crotch, and it's almost like he's trying to take a poop, which is lovely. This is a dramatic laughter pointing accusational sort of pose. I will also point out that these aren't fully refined drawings. They're all very sketchy, and I just kind of rushed through to get the point across with all of them. So there are bits where the proportions are slightly off, but just, you know, bear with that and ignore it for now. This is our kind of what's going on stance that we did. We can see that we have the stick figure up here in the corner, and it translates really well between all of them. So this is our sneaky pose. With the legs, you can often swap which legs you do because the stick figure can't really convey what is the right or left leg, really. So you kind of improvise that as you go through it. This is our Jet Li, Bruce Lee sort of jump in midair kick thing. This is our push against one. You can see that these two both have very extreme motion paths, and you can see that in the stick figure as well. This has a very curved forward path. This one is it's a push forward through the air, our Bruce Lee kick. So everything is really just kind of angled forward into that front foot. And then this one is different. It's curved over into the arm, so you can see where the weight is pushing behind. This is our dance. This is another one where the motion is very direct, and you can kind of see that in the stick figure as well. How it's jumping forward like that. This is our leap forward down onto the ground just before landing, and so this is a compilation of all of these poses put together. I hope you enjoy this tutorial and things that we went through here. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you later. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoy my videos. You can download the reference files from this tutorial by clicking the link in the description. And remember to share any art, animation or game you make on newgrounds.com. Until next time, see you later.